Hampshire's Secretary of State notched two big wins in 2022, seeing voter confidence in New Hampshire elections improve and securing a full two-year term just last month. But as high stakes as his brief tenure has been so far, it's only going to get more interesting as the battle over first-in-the-nation primary status becomes real in 2023. Secretary of State David Scanlon is our guest this morning, and thanks for joining us here, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, Adam.
So it's one thing to try and outmaneuver states, whether or not it's Michigan or Nevada or somebody trying to creep up on, snatching that primary date away from you. It's something totally different when it's a primary, and they're starting this early in doing that. I know you can't share a lot about your strategy, but how do you approach this when it is a party and not a state going after the primary?
Well, certainly we're facing a big challenge because the party can throw certain strategies at us that might make it difficult for candidates to participate in our primary. With that said, however, our primary has a lot to offer. It's very easy for candidates to get on the ballot. It's a great place to campaign for a candidate that does not have high name recognition or a large amount of financial resources to get a campaign going. It's a place where they can get media attention, get their message to the voters, and if they do well here, that can propel them into a better position later on in the primary calendar. I don't see that changing, and I think regardless of what the DNC attempts to do, we're still going to have candidates that are going to participate in our primary.
The DNC has already unveiled its calendar, and following the state law would mean maybe the primary is looking at a mid to late January date. But given the fact that they put their cards on the table, do you still have to be cagey? Do you still have to wait to set the date?
I'm going to wait to set the date. There's a lot that can happen between now and next fall. There may be other states that decide that they're going to make an attempt to move early and not follow the DNC calendar as well. We have the luxury of just being patient and watching, see how the landscape develops, and then at the right time, we'll announce the date of our primary.
Some of the punitive measures the DNC has put together, you mentioned this, are aimed at making sure that candidates don't come to New Hampshire, almost trying to suffocate the primary rather than just block it out altogether. It's down in the weeds on this, but the candidate must sign their name to get on the ballot here in New Hampshire. And you have this situation where the DNC is saying, if your name's on the ballot, we're going to punish you. If someone else tries to put your name on the ballot, we're going to punish you if you don't try to take it off. I've heard some discussion of potentially making it easier, trying to find an end around for these candidates where they don't get in as much trouble and still have a path to ballot access. Do you think that's necessary, or if they don't want to come, it can just be a write-in?
I think if they don't want to come, it can just be a write-in. Our passions in this state are running really high right now with the challenge, and I think it's important not to have a knee-jerk reaction to how we might address the issues. I mean, we have time. We can see how things develop, but in the end, we have a very appealing primary process for potential candidates, and I don't think that we're going to be ignored by everyone.
You put a lot of effort into building voter confidence in elections, and we'll get to more on that in a moment, but I want to take that template of paying attention to public opinion in New Hampshire and apply it to this situation. According to the latest UNH poll, the group with the weakest strong support for the primary is among that 18 to 34 age group, and only a plurality of them they're neutral. So essentially they're kind of up in the air on this. It's almost like, well, we don't really care one way or the other what happens. Do you have to worry at all about the fact that the idea that, do you think they fully understand what you're getting at here?
Well, I think those of us that have been through many primaries and many challenges understand what's at stake. But it's also trying to root and cheer for the home team, and the younger generation are new fans in this process, and we have to help them understand why it's important, why the role that New Hampshire plays in allowing anybody that has that dream to grow up and become president, has a chance in this state, is so important. Our process is driven by the people and the voters. It's not driven by the political parties that would love to be able to anoint who their candidates are going to be. The candidates that come to New Hampshire have to prove themselves. They have to be able to engage, and they have to be able to convince people that the ideas and the vision that they have for our country is the best one. And we have to focus on the younger generation to help them understand what's at stake and how important this process is.
On to voter confidence. You had your special committee working on this all year long, and the latest UNH poll, again, another one here, the figure for those who were very confident that their vote was counted accurately, that went up almost 20% from 57 to 76% from 2016 to 2022. I know you'd like to give a lot of credit to your committee, but there's got to be bigger forces at play here when you see such a huge groundswell. What do you think happened?
Well, I think that overall the 2022 election across the country went well, and there was a tremendous amount of scrutiny on every state's election processes by individuals that have concerns or have heard the misinformation related to conspiracy theories and things out there. They're skeptics, and that's a healthy thing in a democracy. But I think the way the elections played out across the country, including here in New Hampshire, show that they ran well. The results were accurate. There were some glitches here and there. There were some problems. There always are. But overall, the results of the election reflected who the winners were in that process, and the voters, for the most part, accepted those results.
This issue predates former President Donald Trump, but he obviously put a lot of fuel on the fire with his claims. Do you think one of the catalysts here was the fact that in 2020 he made such big claims about election fraud, and yet every time his attorneys went to court to put up or shut up, they didn't have the goods and they got tossed out? Did that play a role?
Well, certainly when there are major politicians, and it happens in both parties, that make statements that challenge the legitimacy of our elections and how the processes work, people pay attention to that, and they want to see for themselves, how things play out. I think the fact that the challenges in court and the fact that there wasn't proof out there for the claims that were being made certainly helped elevate the level of confidence the voters had in the 2022 election. But I think New Hampshire and other states did a much better job of making sure that the process was open, that it was transparent, and there was a lot of encouragement for individuals that are concerned about elections to participate in the process to the extent that they're able.
Back to the Voter Confidence Committee. You took some heat for appointing someone to that commission who critics say had spread election misinformation regarding 2020. Some saying it was a mistake to put someone like that on a committee that's trying to boost confidence in elections. Ultimately, he didn't vote in favor of the report that the committee put out, despite a lot of effort to try and get him on board. He's putting out his own report, essentially. Do you think it was still worth it to bring him to the table?
Oh, absolutely. And, the criticism came from a special interest group that is affiliated with a particular political party. It's a group that's funded by dark money. I mean, we don't know who their contributors are, although they get a lot of money from those individuals or groups. And I think that there's going to have to be a call for organizations like that to be more transparent if they're going to participate, especially if they're going to be critical of processes that take place in New Hampshire. But the focus on a single individual, I think, was unfair. Ken Eyring was a significant contributor and a productive contributor to the process. The other members of the committee, the other 7 members on there, also have diverse backgrounds, and I think other groups could have picked on other individuals that participated in that on that committee. But the bottom line was it was a diverse group, and that was done on purpose. And those individuals reflected the attitudes and the views and the concerns of the voters of New Hampshire, the entire spectrum, not just a particular focus group. And I think collectively, they took the time to hear public input, and we heard the whole range. They listened, and I listened. They then, and I think that was a really important function of this group just by itself, that there was a governmental body that was listening to concerns that the voters have about how our processes work. But then they got together as a group, as 8 individuals, and they sat down over many sessions and talked about what they heard, what were the most important issues, and where are the areas that we should be working to try and help improve confidence. And I think the committee as a whole including Ken Eyring, did a fantastic job in that regard. And for me personally, there were no surprises in that report. I mean, I kind of knew where the problem areas were, but the group pulled them out and they identified them without any input from me in that particular process. And I think that was a great thing. And it is something that I think the legislature is going to be able to use to help them know where to focus on addressing the concerns that we have about voter confidence.
And certainly the system has withstood the scrutiny, and that's probably going to play into the first-in-the-nation arguments in the months ahead. Secretary of State David Scanlon, we appreciate your time here on Close Up, and I'm sure we'll be having you back here to pester you about a primary date in the
thanks,
future.
Adam.
Thanks for your time.